Hello everyone, welcome back to Pixel Village and I am Radha Krishnan. Well, this one is going to be a tutorial. There are more than one way to explain this particular situation. So, and personally, I'm still not very clear on which route to take. So I'm going to be very promptly calling it shooting in the dark. Well, this video is going to be talking about how to effectively shoot in low light conditions. Well, these days, the modern digital cameras are, most of them, in fact, almost all of them kind of talk about the high ISO capability. Well, in another way, you can say low light sensitivity of the camera. Now, that has actually understood by many less or under-initiated photographer, both photographically and digitally, as a license to pick up the camera and shoot in any conditions and expect to get a clean result. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the kind of feeling that I get when I see some queries, doubts in forums and photographers whom I meet who use top-rated cameras, latest digital technology and stuff, and still find grains in their image. Most of them think that it's by default they should be getting a clean image because as a photographer who's paid top dollars for the latest technology, you feel that it is your right almost to get a clean image by default. Now, to understand shooting in low light situations, you must also understand a little bit of film. Now, in the olden days of film, the options were very limited. You had to use film to suit a lighting condition. The thumb rule said that if I have a lot of light to work with, then I work with a low speed film. Low speed film also guaranteed me crisp, clear, very sharp, low grain or no grain kind of images. And if I am working with low light or very low light, and if I had no option of adding light, well, then I have to actually work with a high-speed film. Now, high-speed films, as you go up in ISO, it was ASA then, grains were guaranteed. I mean, it came as a part of it. There was no escaping grains. So the low-speed films had virtually no grain, and the high speed, of course, came with lots of grains, and you could actually see them in prints, and there was no escaping that. Now, in the digital world, it's not grain that we need to worry about, it is the noise. Now, when there is not enough light for the sensor to record, the sensor tends to amplify that signal on that particular, let's say, pixel or the photo site, which is inside the pixel. Now, the ever-improving sensor technology and, let's say, the image processing algorithm have actually solved that resultant noise due to, greater signal-to-noise ratio, and have kind of camouflaged that noise. It's there, but they have managed to kind of reduce the apparent effect of it. Now, that doesn't mean that you have the license to pick up that camera and shoot in any shutter speeds and any ISOs and expect to get, clean, crisp result. And of course, you end up, let's say, blaming the camera for that result. Now, in this video, we're going to see how to effectively shoot in low light conditions. Now, for the demonstration, I'm going to be using an entry-level Fujifilm camera, the XS10, which is an APS-C camera. People also have this feeling that APS-C also is not very good because it also brings in grains. Well, noise. And I'm using a 16 to 80 mm XF, which is their kit lens. Okay, now There are a few things that you must consider before you set out. The first is, don't assume that the camera can solve everything for you, okay? You need to use your top story, your understanding of the situation, and your understanding of the basics are very, very important. Now, in the film world, I told you, low ISO also gave you a less grainy image, and high ISO by default gave you grains. Now, there is no one solution to all your problems, especially in photography, right? I mean, we come across different set of problems every day, and we come up with the solutions instantly, and your past experience, your understanding of the basics, and all understanding of the technology, all that helps you to come up with an effective solution. Now, that's the reason why I use the term less or under-initiated photographer in the beginning. Though the camera companies kind of guarantees you low light or high ISO sensitivity, they will still be very happy with you shooting at the lowest possible ISO, because that actually guarantees you a cleaner image, which also indirectly means that the truth from the film world still kind of holds good to a great extent. Lower the ISO, cleaner the image, and higher the ISO, well, the chances are that you will end up with some noise, not grains, in your digital image. Now, while you hold on to that thought, let me also tell you few fundamentals that you must remember. First of all, let's get it into our head. Let's drill it into our head that shutter speed is what determines whether you're going to get a grain in your image or not, and I'll tell you why. Okay, well, it is due to let's say extra gain, signal to noise ratio, and all that is occurring in the sensor, but the culprit is shutter speed. So if we get a grip on the shutter speed, we will be able to actually control that to a great extent. Okay, one. Now, the thumb rule says that at 1/125, you can freeze most naturally occurring moments like walking, sitting, talking, head turns, etc. And below 1/60, your camera will actually require a support. Now, this is the thumb rule. People who are shooting wildlife, say birds in motion, sports photographers, they all prefer not to come below 1/2000 of a second. So that's a given. But what happens is, like, due to the reasons that I told you earlier, photographers tend to kind of ignore this fundamental, thumb rules and shoot at, let's say, 1/5000, 1/6000 in bright daylight, which will actually ask you to push up the ISO, right? Now, the cameras also come with stabilization. Earlier in the DSLRs, it was the optical image stabilization, which basically would give you only 2-axis stabilization. Now you have an in-body image stabilization, which actually will take care of 5 axes, which will include your tilt, yaw, and the roll. Correct? Now, with all that to your advantage, you can actually gain about 5 stops of working either the aperture or the shutter speed. A shot that requires 1/125 of a second can be actually shot effectively at 5 stops lower shutter speed. I am using the Fujifilm X-S10, which has 6 stops of image stabilization, which is actually combined with the optical image stabilization of the lens. Now, this lens that I'm using do not have optical image stabilization, hence I'm going to discount that, and I'm saying, okay, so I have 5 stops of image stabilization available in this camera, which is the X-S10. Which also means that something that I can shoot at, let's say, 1/125 of a second can effectively be shot at 5 stops lower shutter speed. So which is 1 by 1/25th, 1 by 60th, 30, 15, 7 and 3, 1 by 3.5. Technically, that kind of a speed, I should be able to get a very clear image instead of shooting at 1 by 1/25th of a second, which also means that I can gain so much of ISO. Something that would require me to shoot at, let's say, 12,800 ISO at 1 by 1/25th can be shot at 6,400, 3,200, 1,600, 800 and 400 can be shot at 400 ISO. Now, we ignore this. Let's not go into such ridiculously low shutter speeds. Instead, shoot somewhere in the middle, let's say 1 by 30th of a second, all right? Thereby, I can shoot at something like, instead of shooting at 12,800 ISO, I can shoot at 600 ISO or 800 ISO, which actually will give me a much cleaner image in comparison to the one which I would have got at 12,800 ISO. Now, that is the premises under which we must approach a subject, especially when you're shooting in low light conditions. All right, so take a good look at your frame and assess that optimum speed in which you can actually record, optimum speed and lowest ISO in which you can work and take that shot, instead of whimsically picking a high shutter speed, thereby resulting a high ISO usage and end up having, let's say, an inferior quality image. It's technology. They have guaranteed you. I mean, it's like, a Ferrari which will take you from 0 to 100 in like 3.2 seconds. And imagine what will happen if you try that in a busy market street. You're going to kind of injure, probably, kill a few people. That's exactly what will happen in the camera as well. You will eventually become a rather dissatisfied soul. So what I'm going to do is to take a few shots. Okay, I'm going to look behind the camera now. It's relatively dimly lit. I'm going to give you a reading at 100 ISO, and then you'll get an idea of the kind of light that is existing here. And I'm going to shoot a few shots using this camera. And of course, we'll compare the results. Take a look at it. Before I begin, let me tell you about one more thumb rule which you have to keep in mind. Now, this is also from, Fundamentals of Photography pre-IBIS era principle, which actually talks about a relationship between shutter speed and the focal length that you're working on. So, one upon the focal length that you're working on will actually give you a stable image. Which means if I am shooting on, let's say, 50 as my focal length, 1 upon 50 ideally should give you a stable image. If that is a problem for you, then I think you should go and do a little more practice with it. And in the IBIS era, you can actually take advantage of that additional stops that you're going to gain because of the IBIS. So 1 upon 80 means I can actually shoot with this camera, I can shoot on 40, 20, 10, 5 and 2, about half a second ideally. But I'm saying don't go to half a second, but shoot somewhere in the middle and thereby gain a couple of stops on your ISO. Now, and if I use this light meter to measure the ambient light, it gives me at 100 ISO and at, let's say, 1 second, my aperture is 4.5. So which means I need to shoot at f4, I have to work very close to 1 second and thereabouts at 100 ISO. Now that's a little too much to ask. So I'd like to work with a little faster, shutter speed. But again, I don't want to go to ridiculously high, shutter speeds. Okay, for demonstration, I'm going to use Aditya here. I'm going to take a few shots and you can compare the results and tell me if what I was trying to drive home is correct or not. Aditya, take your phone and see, occasionally shift your face here, there, etc. All right, so I'm going to shoot at shutter priority mode. I'm going to keep my shutter speed as 1/15th of a second. Okay, and I'm going to start from there. Okay, and I'm going to work up in one stop increments. Okay, and okay. So I've shot up to 100, 1/100. Compare all these images now. All right, thank you, Aditya. Sure. Okay, next experiment is going to be with this portion of this trunk. Okay, it's very dimly lit. I'm getting a little bit of a light from top like this here. And I'm going to use a table tripod and take a few shots. Keeping the camera steady, I'm going to opt for various different shutter speeds, and I'm going to change the ISO along with it and keep the aperture the same and take a look at those images. Let's also do some shots in daylight. Well, what do you think? Do you agree with me or not? So next time you pick up your camera, make sure that you, like I said in the beginning, take a good look at your scene and decide that optimal shutter speed and ISO combination where you can get a clean result. And if noise is what you want, be my guest. Shoot at the highest ISO, highest shutter speed, and get that grain in. Also, you can also think of underexposing and over processing. So, you can extract some good grains or noise out of your image. But if you are in a wildlife situation and the light is really low and you're going to miss an important moment, well, by all means, push the ISO up. You try and get that shutter speed that is required to capture that image. There, a little bit of grains, noise, vagara are welcome, but not everywhere. Definitely not in your wedding albums for sure. So, technology has provided a lot of, let's say, tools, but it's up to you to how to use it effectively. If you are interested in learning photography, please head over to pixelvillage.com. We have a set of fantastic photography teachers there taking classes for you. They're all recorded sessions. You can watch the bouquet of offering, and if you like it, you can subscribe. Bye for now.